right, there I am up there. All right, well, I'm ready to go in three, in two, and uh, yeah, in three, two, and one. Welcome or welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion. We are joined this evening by Nimer Jaber. I found out about you, by the way, from Victor Gouveia, my great friend, who's been on my podcast many times, and Whose Blind Life Is It Anyway? So that's how I found out about you. I've known of you for a while, Nimmer. So basically, I'm going to walk through the interview with you, but basically by asking only one question, and I'll ask interjecting questions along the way as I see fit. But who is Nimmer Jaber? You can take the conversation in any direction you so choose.
Well, sounds good. Hi, and I'm glad to be here. I have been on Victor's podcast some, and well, one of his podcasts. I know he runs about 2,000 different podcasts,
He does indeed.
and yep. So I used to, well, I still do have a YouTube channel and occasionally run podcasts of my own called Blind Tech Adventures. It's been under a few different names, and kind of got away a little bit from that recently, although we'll still probably put up the occasional episode, but there we go. So my name is Nimmer, and I'm happy to be here. And who am I? I think, well, let's see. I'm a human being. I'm not an alien. I came uh, well, I'm trying to come up with something funny, but I failed. Anyway, so yeah, I think a few things about me. So I am blind for anyone who's curious, and I was. We'll get the vision topic out of the way, I guess, first. Uh, I was born with a little bit of vision. Regained a bit more vision with some surgeries. I lost a good amount of vision. Eventually, time took the rest of my vision, and I had both eyes removed a few years back. And so I'm totally blind. I live on my own, and right now I'm living in California, in the Bay Area, but I've lived a bunch of other places. So maybe if any of your listeners are out there, if you're from, let's see, where I live, Texas, Colorado, a bunch of states in the U.S., Ohio, Alabama, Minnesota, uh, yeah, a bunch of places. Maybe you know me, maybe you don't. But anyway, hello, and I'm glad to be here. So let's see. Right now, I'm working at Google, and I work on the Android team on accessibility for TalkBack, screen reader, and Braille. I also love the outdoors, so a lot of times you'll find me outside when I'm not on my computer. Even when I am on my computer, I'll sometimes work outside. But I love being outside, so I like to hike. I like to go to the beach and hang out there. Basically anything outside. I enjoy that. Um, Kind of going back to my history. I'm not originally from here, originally from Israel. And when I came here, my progression with kind of getting to be where I'm at. Let's see. So I started out in Israel, and I came here probably about how old was I? 10, maybe somewhere around there. I was fairly young still, and I didn't really want to use a cane. Back where I grew up, I never even saw the thing. It was funny. I was introduced to Braille at a young age, but I was not introduced to canes. And so I came here, and they kept trying to give me the cane, and I would throw them out the bus windows and give them to other kids, and whack other people with them. I hate canes. I really hate canes. And to this day, I hate canes. I use a cane because it's kind of like the best mobility tool we have. We either have canes or dogs. but I don't think we can always get down that direction. But I don't think either one is very adequate. Um, and so anyway, eventually I kind of got more accustomed to using the cane. And I said, well, maybe I should, use it, and that's fine, whatever. I got into tech stuff mostly because so I attended public school for most of my schooling, and I ran into I was given pieces of technology that the teachers did not know how to use. So I remember getting like I don't know, a couple of note takers. I think like a Braille and Speak or whatever it was called back then. Really, really old tech. Now, anyway, it's like 30 year old tech stuff. So gives you an idea of when I went to school anyway. But the they didn't know how to use it, and so I would press buttons and break things and figure out how to use things. And so I discovered that, okay, I'm fairly good at that. And I have the patience to teach, but I didn't really want to do any of that. What I really wanted to do is go into the military, and I didn't want a desk job in the military. I wanted to be out, doing the fighting. And so I even went to a recruiter's office, and for some reason they don't want a blind guy to fire an M16. Although I did get called by Israeli recruiters, wondering where I was and why I wasn't there, because there's mandatory service there. But anyway, they wouldn't let me fire an M16, so there goes that goal. I can't be in the military. So I did a number of different jobs, did kind of warehouse work, started out selling newspaper subscriptions. I mean, I worked call centers. I did a few different things. And eventually I kept getting back around to this idea, well, maybe. So I also kind of spent a little bit of time doing some volunteer tech instruction, but eventually I was like, I needed a place to stay. I got to a point where uh, I got as far as I wanted to go with school, got out of school, didn't really want to be there. I was trying to work 3 jobs and make it there. That didn't work. And so I found out about this World Service for the Blind, this Lions World or whatever it's called in Arkansas. And so I went there. And the idea was I'm going to get a job working for the federal government for the IRS. Well, I get there and discover actually I can't do that because I'm not a citizen, or I was not a citizen of the U.S. at that time. I am now. But they were like, well, maybe you can do tech training. We have this tech training program. I said, well, I could probably run that program. I don't know that I really need to go in that program, but okay, I'll go in it. So I did that for about a month or two. It was supposed to be a 9-month program, and after that, I got out and got a internship that eventually led to full-time employment with a company out in Minnesota doing tech instruction. So that's how I got into tech instruction. Um, I know I never really Google was never really this like dream. Like I really want to work at Google. Google kind of came about because I met a couple of Googlers at a conference when I was teaching tech. I went to a conference and they were demoing things, and I think one of the things they were highlighting was Chromevox or something. And I stood up and I said, this is a really terrible product. It kind of sucks. And they're like, oh, okay, well, tell us more about it. And I'll give them a list of all these things. So, like, well, we're working on this new redesign, and so we want to get your feedback on the new design. It's okay, well, that's fine. So I took it home, played with it. I think probably in the first weekend I filed like 50 or 100 bugs or something, and uh, never thought much more of it. A few years down the road, though, I got an email from one of those people. They're like, well, we have these positions. It's kind of a vendor contractor through a vendor. They do accessibility testing. So, well, I've been doing tech teaching for a while. I don't really know if I would be bored doing accessibility testing, but why not? I get to work at Google. So, sure. So I eventually applied and ended up moving out here to the Bay Area. And eventually converted to full time with Google. And Still not so much doing accessibility testing anymore, but still working on accessibility of Android and kind of working alongside the UX engineers, all the product managers, etc., to make sure that they kind of they implement accessibility correctly. And what I found is, one of the big things that appealed to me about the military is like this overall, this entire like mission. Of course, part of it is like you're outdoors and doing more physical things, but part of it is that like you get to help a bunch of people, and people don't even realize necessarily what you're doing. And so this is kind of like that. It's like Android's used by I don't know 2 billion users in the world, uh, and so any change to to Android really impacts a huge number of people. And so I found that kind of interesting and wanted to be part of that process. Well, actually, initially I started out working on Workspace, which again is similar. It has like over a billion, quite a lot of users anyway. And so every day is kind of different. You're working on different things. There's a lot of different components, different teams. So in a way, it's this is what I'm doing right now. I don't know that I will always be doing it. Kind of always like looking for the next new shiny cool thing to be doing. Maybe next year I'll be in bike repair. Who knows? But for right now, I work at Google and I'm having a good time. Anyway, I went through a lot. I want to see what questions that you have.
I just absolutely love everything you said already. Did you know, by the way, before you came in here, since you were already doing some research, did you know that I am also Jewish and I've been to Israel twice?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's pretty great.
And did you also know that I too, for many years of my life when I was a teenager, now I'm 32, but when I was a teenager, I also wanted to be in the army too. And
Excellent.
I had that same exact dream. And when you said that, it was like, really, there's someone else like me out there who also was utterly fascinated by that too.
Yep.
But overall, what has happened in my life, and this will lead up to a question, is what has happened is in case Google didn't tell you, my name's Aaron Richmond, and this is the Aaron's Opinion podcast. And my story is shockingly, I didn't even really know this, but shockingly similar to yours in a lot of ways. I was born here in the States. I do still have relatives and family in Israel. But anyway, I have glaucoma and a congenital heart defect, and I've had to overcome a lot of obstacles in schooling and getting my bachelor's degree in international affairs. Now I work for Company X. It's a company probably based in Silicon Valley somewhere. Basically, what they do is provide English language instruction, and I'm basically an online English teacher, and I teach English as a second language.
Oh, so not Twitter.
Additionally, no, not Twitter. um,
Okay.
additionally, I love talking about linguistics and language acquisition, and I speak
Yes.
French. Je parle français, so I'm very proud to be someone who speaks both English and French. And during the pandemic, how I got to where we are today is during the pandemic, I was sitting at home with my guide dog, who was still alive then. She passed away during the pandemic, but still alive with her then. And, I noticed, Nimmer, that there were a lot of blind people around the community who are asking questions. And I just love to talk. If you haven't noticed, I love using my voice to educate people and help people. So I started creating these audio files where I would answer someone's question. Should I go to college? How to do this? How to do that? And over time, that would develop into this whole concept of a podcast. And I've always had a deep fascination with talk radio and podcasts my entire existence. And this is just something that, it just makes me happy to be able to learn from you and to help you to share your story with the world. Again, like you were saying, right? Higher mission, right? Something that you and I are doing, just us two guys sitting on Zoom, but think 30 years from now, this might really help someone 30 years from now in the future. And that's the magic and power of podcasting. You said something that spoke to me. You said when you started to play with technology and note takers, as I did as a little boy in the 90s, you always like to break stuff. You always like to solve problems. I have a twofold question that I know you have a great answer for. What have you learned in your life by being confident enough to break things and create organized chaos? And then what things should we as society today be comfortable with breaking? Explain that and really unfold that for me.
I think one of the problems that I've seen in our blindness community is that uh, a lot of times kids or adults are afraid to break things. They have had their hands held. They have kind of been expected to not do those kind of things, and kind of just been held back from playing, from discovering and having those adventures and breaking things. I mean, in my case, at around the same time, I also I bought a bunch of parts and put a computer together. I fried it because I didn't realize that on a supply, on this particular power supply, there was a switch. It's 110 or 115, whatever it is, 110, 220. We can guess which one I had it set to. Fried that computer, and but it's always worth exploring and playing and figuring things out. I think it sets you up to have a lot more confidence, and sometimes maybe even a little bit of misplaced confidence, but maybe that's not a bad thing. And it sets you up to go out in the world and just you're not waiting for somebody to teach you something. You're not waiting for somebody to hand you something. You're going out and just doing those things. You're figuring those things out. And that process of figuring things out, I feel like, at least in my case, I learn a lot better. I learned so much better when I'm the one who took the thing apart that I have to put back together. I learned so much better at doing hands-on, just being able to know how something fits together. Even like today in my house, I see something new, or I move to a new house, I see that something new, or some new thing that they have a new appliance, whatever. Chances are I'm going to probably take it apart, or at least I just want to know how it works. Because it's just, for me, I have a curious mind, and that's just what I want to do. And and so as a tech trainer, that's really helped me out because I find that, well, so first of all, I think my first job is to teach. It's not even, I don't know that teaching it is the right place, helping people find confidence. 90% of any kind of instruction, I think, for tech, especially in my case, what I found is 90% of the instruction is about how to find confidence. So one of the first lessons is, okay, what I'd like you to do is to put your hands on the keyboard and push every single button and see what happens. I promise you're not going to break it, at least not to an extent that we can't fix. I mean, I guess you could physically destroy it, but go ahead and push every single button, and don't be afraid of this keyboard. It takes away that fear. Once you know that, hey, you've pressed every single button there is to press and done everything there is to do, and you haven't messed it up badly enough, then you're a lot less likely to be afraid of it, and you're more likely to explore and try to figure out how to do something. And so the rest of the 5-10% of the teaching is just this guidance of where do you go, where do you find resources. Ideally, I don't want to see you again in a year or two when some new program comes out and you have to relearn it. I want you to know how to go and figure things out for yourself. So I'll guide you along that process. For some people, that doesn't work as well. Some people need a little bit more hands-on, more step-by-step learning, and that's fine. But I think that being able to explore, being able to go outside, being able to appreciate getting lost. Like for me, one of my favorite things to do, I love getting lost. It's so fun. It can be frustrating when you have to get somewhere in a hurry, but it is so fun. Why? Because I'm always finding something new. Maybe there's a new coffee shop. Maybe there's a new something. I don't know. But I go out and I find it, and I have a lot of fun doing it. And I think people are kind of afraid of that. And I think a lot of times, well, maybe they were held back, not allowed to go out, not allowed to push all these buttons, had a teacher that told them what to do, and so they did it. Maybe they even got in trouble for breaking something. I think in my case, I don't know I don't know if I was allowed to do it so much as I just did it, and that's just how it always works out for me.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a really brilliant response to that, and I completely understand, what you mean. Earlier when you came in today, you affirmed to me that you are not an alien, you're a human being. So, Nimmer, there's been a lot of talk about, the future and aliens and UFOs and that type of thing. And I might secretly have an opinion about it all, but what do you think? What do you think as someone who loves to learn and loves to, reach into the depths of the unknown? What do you think is a healthy reality for understanding the truth of all this alien talk and UFO talk these days? Have you thought of it?
I think ultimately the world is a really big place, and there's always room for new things, and there's always room to learn. And so, any reality, somebody says, "Yeah, this is reality. There's no aliens." Yeah, and I always, in my mind, it's always a question for me. It's like, yeah, maybe today that is the case. Maybe today we don't have any evidence of that. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that it's not out there. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep looking for it. The one thing about science is so great because science is always evolving. It starts out being one thing. The Earth is flat. Well, eventually we figure out maybe it's not so flat, or we think it's not so flat. Maybe in 200 years we'll figure out something different. Who knows? Although I think we have a pretty good grasp on that one by now. Uh, it's what's out there in the world. I think it's really fits in with that exploration. Always keep your mind open. One of the big problems we have now is a lot of this divide division. We kind of have these ideas and we like to stick to them like glue. Like this is absolutely the case. Well, I don't know. Open the mind and figure out maybe there's something else out there. Maybe eventually we'll discover it. Maybe not. Part of me thinks, God is a lot bigger than all of us, and our Creator is a lot bigger than all of us can ever begin to imagine. And so, did He really just put us here, or is there something else? I don't know. I don't know if we know that answer, but I'm open to the idea that there is something else, and I think it's always worth at least keeping that in the back of the mind.
You're right. You're right. Never mind about the Earth for a minute, but our universe is so large. Our universe is so big that I would argue it's impossible for us to be alone. But that's only my opinion. Everybody has their own opinion. Even, when my brother was going to university, he was telling me that there's even groups, even today, there's people that still think the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
So, if we can live in a society where we have flat earthers, then we can live in a society where I can believe in aliens. That's how that works, I guess. But yeah, it does interest me that there are a lot of these ancient opinions that have seemed dated by now that people still believe in. Some people still believe in it when in fact science has proved the otherwise. But then you still have people who still believe. That whole notion is very interesting to me, that people maintain their belief system regardless of scientific fact and advancement. But
I
I don't
think
know.
part of it is how you
Yeah.
grow up and your
Yeah.
genetics. So it's like you grow up exploring your world and questioning everything, then you're going to do that.
Right.
And so, but if you grow up and someone tells you what to think, what to believe, you know, say, look at your hand. Did you burn your hand on the stove? If you burn your hand on the stove, it's because you didn't believe when whoever it is told you that it was hot 5,000 times.
Right.
You had to touch it. You had to feel it. You had to realize, oh, this is actually hot.
Right.
Uh, some people are just kind of like, yeah, okay, it's hot. Okay, I won't touch it. That's fine. Well, it might be ice cold, but you'll never know. I mean, chances are it's hot, but you never know.
Right, exactly. No, that part is very interesting. So you also mentioned how things evolve over time. Let me see how can I dig into this? How can I bite into this next part of the meal here? So about that Google thing. So what do you know? What I guess would be my question. Up until this point, since you joined Google, how has Google evolved and changed up to today?
So I can't speak too much about Google, but I will say I think a couple of things. Google is continually looking to grow and expand kind of the areas that it's serving people. Google is also continuing to evolve in making products accessible and looking at those processes and how things are done. And I think ultimately tech is a ever changing, and so whether Google is on top or Facebook's on top or Twitter's on top, it's kind of like wait 5 or 10 years or a year, and maybe things will be different. Tech is always evolving, and so it's kind of like well, I work at Google and under kind of Google's vision for how things are and what the future kind of is, and all the AI uh, hype and fun stuff that's coming, and but ultimately, I don't. And tech is kind of very uncertain. Google has been at the front of certain things, and other companies kind of jump ahead in other areas, and it's always fun with tech. You never know if you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to still have a job because what you're doing is still relevant.
Sure, sure. How long has Google Podcasts been around as a podcaster? We're familiar with Google Podcasts. When did they launch that particular product with the podcasting wing?
I'm really not sure when they. Yeah, I don't have exact dates. I'm sure we can look that up. It's
That is
probably like
fine.
4 or 5 years ago, somewhere
Oh,
around
really?
there.
That recently? Wow, that would surprise me. I would think it would have been around
Yeah,
much
maybe it's a
longer.
little bit longer. I'm not sure. Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's.
All right. All right. Yeah, I mean, I think that every year we see that companies move up and down, but I do think the point has been made and the point has been argued before that Twitter is great. However, the full potential of Twitter, at least in my opinion, the full potential of Twitter has really been shadowed, in my opinion, by the fact that Twitter has attracted, so much, in my opinion, of the wrong company, all these quote unquote trolls and conspiracy theorists left, right, up and down. Twitter's really attracted, and I'm not talking about the company, I just mean from the user perspective.
Yeah.
Twitter has attracted users that are kind of getting in the way of Twitter, in my estimation. I think Twitter had a lot of potential, but I also think that Twitter is kind of being pushed towards the backstage a little bit.
Well, the web is a very incredible place. There's a lot of things that you can learn. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of really good things that happen. There's a lot of connections that are made, and the opposite is also true. And so that's it's kind of like the struggle for any tech company is, of course, how much moderation do you do, and do people want that kind of moderation, and what happens when you apply it, and can you maintain it, and ultimately it's up to the human nature of anybody, how they act on the web. I think some people are like, well, I'm behind a computer screen, I can say and do what I like, and say and do things that I wouldn't ordinarily begin to say, and some people they get on it and they just use it for news. So I think
Yeah.
with any company, it's always going to be a struggle on the web. It's a world wide web. It's open. It's an open web, unless maybe you live in China. And we can exchange ideas, but then there's also been more and more discussion about limits and restrictions and content moderations and all these other things, and then that kind of is the question. What is free speech, and who decides what that means, and it's kind of a messy world. It's a messy world we live in. But
Yeah.
I don't know that it's new. It's just kind of the web
Hmm.
continues to spread. More and more users keep getting on, and
Right. Well, if Nimmer was put into a position of deciding what free speech means, what does free speech mean to Nimmer? What does it mean to you, free speech? How do you define free speech?
I tend to be on the more of the side of less moderation, as long as there's no immediate threat of harm. You know, somebody is making plans to shoot up a school, something like
Right.
that. Uh, I tend to generally be though on less moderation side. I think that ideas are good, and I don't think that it's up to anybody. Should be any up to any one person to decide which ideas are good and which ones are radical. Some people are for Trump, and some people are for Biden, and some people are for Israel, and some people are for Russia, and ultimately a lot of that comes down to politics and comes down to your perspective and where you grew up and the information that you have and that you were given, and but is one or any of those perspectives actually wrong? I don't know. I don't know that the U.S. always gets things right. I don't know that any country always gets things right,
Of course
and I
not.
don't
Right.
want to see a company be forced to do that policing of which content
Mhm.
is allowed and not allowed. I tend to be on the side of less is better to an extent. You do still have to have some guardrails, but
Right.
kind of
Right.
finding that balance is really tricky.
Your answer is absolute perfection. At least your answer is perfection. I understand that you tend to lean towards the side of less moderation, and that's good. But I love the fact that you compared it to a country. No country gets it right, and that really helped me to understand. You creating that parallel, that analogy in my mind, that really spoke to me. That really helped me to understand. You convey your opinion clearly. You are very, very talented at conveying opinions in a in both a firm way, but in a very clear and positive way. And I totally get it. You're so right. Not every country, Israel doesn't get it right all the time. U.S. doesn't get it. France. I love France. God knows that France country. I've been there a ton of times. That France country has a ton of problems. If you want to go to a problem where if you want to go to a country where you can speak French, eat great food, and see a lot of problems, go to France. But you're so right. No country gets it right all the time, so no company should be expected to get it right 100% of the time. And it's a
No,
very good, it's a great answer, and
I mean,
I
one
agree with it.
example I give is like
Yeah,
in the U.S., people are kind of against China. China's doing all these things and trying
right.
to take over the world, and I say a lot of things people say about China, but I look at what the government there has done, and they've lifted so many millions of their people basically out of poverty in a very short time. So what did they do right?
That's
But
true.
it's hard to look at those things. It's hard
Hmm.
to consider like even a country that maybe you think is doing bad things. Well, maybe they are doing something right that we should be looking at, or maybe not. I
You're
don't know.
right. No, no, no. You're absolutely right. And China is an important nation. It truly is a great nation. And many of my students are from China. And so Chinese people do have access to Google if they get onto the right VPN, in case you wanted to
Exactly.
know.
Right.
So they Chinese people certainly do have access. I have noticed that how do I even explain this? The knowledge that Chinese people living in China have about internet usage, access, things like that, how to do these things. It's a complete spectrum, as you would expect. Some of them know everything about it, like you. Well,
Absolutely.
and then other of them know even less, or even less. It's a huge spectrum. You're right. Many people would be willing to criticize China. God knows, in all honesty, like you were saying, it's about the experiences, the way we grow up, right? I was never raised to really, quite frankly, be that terribly supportive of China. However, you make a strong argument that still, to which I agree, China is a great nation. And I really do feel bad for the Chinese students that I have who tell me that their lives are hard. And, I say, yeah, I tell them, learn English and then leave China. I say, you're right. You need to get educated and you need to be successful anyway. And I say, you're right. It is extremely unfair to be living in China right now. It's extremely, extremely taxing. But that's their life, and that's what they have to put up with. But yeah, that is a really all extremely, extremely interesting. Wanted to delve with you. Luckily, I only use the internet for good, for educating others and helping others, and watching crazy videos on YouTube. I've seen a lot of videos about the deep web and the dark web. I know the difference between the two, between deep and dark. There is a difference. I know the difference. But so, have you played with Tor much? Tell me about your dark web browsing experiences.
I've played with Tor. I've played with a lot of things, and can be a very scary place, but can also just be, again, Tor in itself is not a bad thing. Tor in
No.
itself is kind of, it's like you're anonymized and or to the extent that anything can be on the web anyway. And I like Torrent itself is not a bad thing, and it gives you access to certain things that maybe you wouldn't otherwise get access to that may not be bad things. But it is kind of a lot more of the wild side of the web, or can be. You can use Tor to access some of those other gateways or other similar other gateways. So yeah, I've gone down some of that. Of course, I have a job, and I'm not likely to talk about some of the things that I've run into on a podcast. But there really is a pretty big spectrum. I mean, I would say you want to get some of the best of the web, and just people that don't like being as monitored or that illusion of that anyway. And of course, you get to the absolute crazy parts, the wild parts. You want to buy guns, you want to buy this, you want to buy that, whatever you like, have access to it. You want to learn how to kill yourself. I mean, it's a wild web.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. Tor, I believe, was invented, speaking of the military, invented by the military to be
Right.
able to send, right? Correct? To be able to transmit messages in an encrypted way around the world. So yeah, it's very interesting. But
I
nowadays,
think sometimes the
yes,
interesting thing is using some of these tools, these anonymity tools, almost draws more attention to you.
sure it does. Of course it does.
And so it's sort of the question of, is it actually doing that obscurity task well these days? And I'm not sure what to think about that one.
Yeah, it seems like you would agree that if you use Tor, you're actually magnifying your internet presence rather
Absolutely.
than there you go. That's your opinion. There you go. I pulled an opinion right out of you. That's what
Yeah.
you were you kind of wanted to say that, but you didn't quite want to say it like that. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. No, luckily I don't use Tor, but I do have a VPN that I'll turn on, if I need to, do banking and stuff like that. But am I going to live a life of fear of these types of things? No, because A, I'm not doing bad things online. B, I know that everything I've done online since is all available to you on Google. So I can't hide from anyone anyway. So I'm just not going to worry about it, to a greater extent of the imagination. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think the interesting is that the VPN thing is also
Mm-hmm.
interesting in that we have this open web,
Right.
but it's not really open, is it? Like, depending on where you live and where your region is, you can watch this show but not that show, or you can buy this plane ticket that's a few $100s cheaper than if you buy it at this other location. It's interesting. A lot of it is kind of business related, and
Sure it
of
is.
course, the government allows some things, but a lot of it is business related. But it's I'm glad that they haven't been locked down more than they have, and it's interesting. I don't know what the future looks like for VPNs and how much governments are going to crack down.
Yeah.
And
So Nimmer though, so are VPNs truly private?
I know they're
No.
not.
No. So and which is what I thought too. So then what is just not even talking about the personality of a company, but then if I turn on a VPN, like what is the technical advantage that I have? Or is it just all, smokes and mirrors?
Truly private is not really, what once you have an internet presence. I mean, you'd have to do quite a bit of work to get sort of anonymized, and the more work that you do, again, the more attention that you're actually drawing to yourself. Sometimes it's better to be obscure and hide in plain view. Um the VPNs, they're basically, instead of going through your ISP service provider and having their
Hmm.
IP address, you're going through some other server and having its IP address, being given. But there's a lot of data on the web that is not necessarily encrypted. So depending on like what you're sending, maybe send an email. Maybe the email body might be, but the subject isn't.
Right.
Or signature lines, or just is there's a lot of examples of data that and it plus really depends on the VPN that's being used on the server that's hosting. Hopefully that hasn't been compromised in some way. That the path that's taken to get to that point, it's which VPN software you're using, the security of your network in general. Is it are you using some coffee shop or something like that? It can help to kind of obscure things a little bit from your ISP. I would say to some extent, and certainly you can use the location feature, or if you connect to a server in some other country and get videos and things from other countries. But like the type of data, your ISP's probably still able to
Yeah.
kind of figure that out, and
Sure.
yeah, so it's a little bit complicated, but
Well, it is, but it seems like your opinion is at best, VPNs help you a little bit, but not
right,
certainly not all the way. It's a little bit of a help, but not the
right.
complete
I
medicine.
would say,
Yeah.
if you're connecting to an open hotspot and
Yeah.
or open Wi-Fi or something, yeah, you should probably use a VPN if you're going to connect to your bank.
Right.
They
Yeah.
do help to some extent, but yeah,
Certainly not truly. It can't prevent
no.
all threat. Yeah, understood. Yeah, that's a really fascinating concept. And then your whole. I'm sure you have a pretty elaborate opinion of all this cryptocurrency stuff. Luckily, I don't have any. In case you were wondering if I was going to send you a Bitcoin from Aaron's opinion, sorry, nope, I don't have any Bitcoins to send you. But have you? What's your philosophy about finance only from a IT perspective? We have a lot of tension right now with cryptocurrency. What do you think about that?
I actually don't have much of an opinion on it because I don't know much about it. I've never
Good.
dug much into crypto. Uh, I think in general, tech getting involved too much with finance is really scary. I saw recently people did not get their or had a bunch of money withdrawn from their Wells Fargo bank accounts. I've seen like people reporting, oh, their accounts were just randomly closed, or their cash was not deposited. People have their cards just completely, stolen, and now they have hundreds of dollars taken out of their accounts or more. And it's like I personally, my philosophy on finance is if I don't have cash in my hand, I don't feel good. And so I still play with cash. I buy gold, and that's my philosophy. If I don't have it in my hand, I don't have it. A card is not enough for me to feel comfortable about it. I'll get direct deposit, something like that. That's fine, but I want to take that cash out as soon as I can. I don't know. I don't. Part of it is like my paranoid side, I guess, maybe a little bit, because
Yeah.
banks are generally safe, and there is like federal insurance and all these other things. But ultimately, if I don't have it in my hand, it doesn't exist.
It's really, you know what? It's really good advice. Kind of going back to what we were saying about people's beliefs, right? If you can't touch it, if you can't see it, then it might be real, but it might not be real. So you have to touch it to
Right.
know it's real. You're
Well, and it
you're a
helps with
very yeah, go
budgeting.
ahead.
It's a lot
Hmm.
easier to spend money from a card when you swipe, 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 or just type in a number and boom, the money's gone. You don't even see it. You don't know what happened to it. It's well, you spent it obviously, but it doesn't feel the same. Man, it feels so much different when you hand over a wad of cash, and now all of a sudden your wallet's more empty, or you have to go get more cash. It feels
Right.
so much more different. I don't know. Like there's something to that. this idea of like you're actually handing something material over. It's not just, oh, here's my card, swipe it, hand me back the card. Yeah, maybe I put it on a credit card and I don't have to pay the bill for another month or two. I don't have to worry about it, and I can finance it for another year and pay a bunch of interest. I don't have credit. I don't want credit. Everything I do is with cash.
Right, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I've only used Apple Pay one time. That's a lot of fun. That's a good way to buy stuff, online once in a while. But yeah,
Yeah.
2 clicks, you can click a button twice and you bought something. That's really powerful, and dangerous for certain people. Yeah.
It's dangerous here, even our transit system. And of course, here, they're not going to hopefully steal that much money, but our transit system, they have now like Apple Pay or even those the special cards. You get a card, all the money's on there, and so all somebody has to do is just take that out of your hand or whatever, tap it against the machine. No authentication, no nothing. To boom, it's paid. It's paid, and go along your way.
It's very unfortunate. Although I think we'll always have that. We will always have that perpetual problem of theft. That's a human problem. But yes, you're right. That's a serious problem. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
human problem, but we make it too easy. It's like,
Yeah, we do
how do you know
completely.
it's me handing it to you? I mean, there's, yeah, here you go,
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah, yeah. Although I will say that if you're trying to pay someone else, like a good friend or something, I do like the electronic way where you can send money to someone and then they can see, an electronic proof of evidence. The evidence,
Yeah.
the electronic trail is good too. Yeah.
Well, it is more real time. I don't know. I think, now we hear about like Russian hackers and North Korean hackers and things like that. I think we think we're relatively secure, but a lot of these banking systems are using these really old mainframes and whatever else. I don't put a lot of trust in our financial system
I
and
mean,
digitally. I just don't. I
me
mean,
neither.
yeah.
Me neither. So, you mentioned your podcasting that you've done in the past. So, what are some of the topics that you're passionate about on your podcast when you do choose to record?
So we generally cover tech stuff and talk about like some of the latest tech stuff and try different toys from companies. And one of the big things, so well, it's kind of like a tech and adventure podcast. So I've gone out and just gone hiking and recorded that, or uh, bought something, put it together, or assembled it, whatever it was, or unboxings. So I've done some unboxings. Had some guests to talk about different topics. I think that topic of travel kind of came up earlier. Um, we had a guy from this company called Strap that came on the podcast about 3 years ago, before that company was fully launched, and was talking about this mobility device that uses haptic feedback and different sensors. It uses LiDAR and ultrasonic sensors, and it's a wearable device, and it gives you similar feedback to maybe what you'd get with a cane. And the idea was they were going to be a cane replacement.
Oh
And
yeah.
so working alongside them and giving them a lot of feedback has kind of helped shape that effort a little bit. And I think like that stuff is really cool because I am pretty passionate about getting rid of the cane, or at least having an alternative to the cane. I would love to find a different solution for that, or the
Let's
dog for that matter.
let's unfold. Let me really take a jab at you. But by the way, I love your name, Jabber. That's what it reminded me, taking a jab at you about that.
Absolutely,
I, I
absolutely.
I love that you have a great name for anything. You have a great name for anything that you do. Nimmer Jabber. That's a good name. Well, my jab about it is no. I nowadays I love my cane because when I go out with my family, I think that the cane is just as much of a social signal. It's a way for me to tell sighted people politely that I'm a blind person, and that's how I view it. But
Yeah.
when I was a little boy, I also hated it. And there were a lot of issues with me learning how to use it, and all children really reject it. And then I had a guide dog for about 10, 13 years during her life, and she
Hmm.
was wonderful. Truly a gift for me. But no, I completely understand what you're saying too, is that there's no right way, and there are and is a lot of debate within the blindness community about guide dogs and canes. I mean, really, you seem You seem you seem a bit repulsed by both canes and dogs.
I am,
So,
absolutely.
okay. Well, why? Tell me why then. That's fine, but tell me why.
Why is a letter between X and Z? Do you have all night for this conversation? Uh, no, look, you know, when Apple, along 10 years ago, 12 years ago, said, hey, we're going to design this phone and it's going to be flat touchscreen, I bet if they asked 100 blind people, at least 99 would have told them, absolutely not, you're crazy, don't do this. Touchscreens are not accessible, they're terrible, we don't want this. And we still have a lot of issues with appliances that are touchscreens, etc., etc. But they went ahead and did it, and now most people cannot live without their iPhones. And so I feel like some of that may be true with the cane. People are used to the cane. This is what they know. It is the status symbol. It is the symbol of I'm blind. It is this thing that maybe you've gotten to be proud of. But ultimately, in my mind, it's not much better than a stick, than a branch. And I know I'm like putting it down, but let's think about the cane. Number one,
Sure, that's
there's
fine.
several problems with it. Number one, you have to hold it. So now you're tying up one hand. Number two, it doesn't give you any feedback about anything above waist height. You can attach sensors to it, but those sensors are always moving. They don't work very well. They add weight to the cane. They add cost. They're no longer waterproof. Ultimately, you don't really get any detection above waist height. Hopefully, you have some echolocation and things like that. But even then, it's not perfect. And I don't know, I can remember a lot of times I've slammed my head into things thanks to this cane. And number three, I think there this idea like you're walking around and there's no efficiency with it. It's not giving you any indication of the types of things that you're about to encounter before you encounter it. As an example, I want to walk into an airport. I want to find the up escalator. Okay, well, maybe I hear an escalator. Is it up or is it down? You don't know. You have to walk up to it, you have to feel it, you have to explore it, you have to go up it, or feel, whatever, find it. In the meantime, you might encounter some chairs, or you might encounter some those rope stanchions, or you might encounter something else, and
Mhm.
all on this meandering route to find this escalator. There's nothing efficient about walking with a cane. You can certainly do it, and you do it independently. I do. I've walked with it now for years. I live on my own. Again, I go to a lot of places. I travel independently, all that. But I still feel this way about this cane. So now
Good.
you have these, and plus they're really easy to break. And right at the wrong moment, you have somebody stepping on the thing or jumping on it or who knows what. It gets caught in something. Now you don't have a mobility tool, so you better have a spare. Uh, okay, the issue I have with the dogs is there's a number of issues with them. They are more difficult to take in things like ride shares. So some of it is
Absolutely.
legislational. I think some of it is like legislational. We've gotten more issues here in the states with planes, and you have to have certain forms to fly, and you have to have them within a certain period of time, and they last a certain period of time, and each airline's a little bit different, and it's all a mess. There's also a lot of some people love dogs. There's two sides. There's the I love dogs and I'm going to distract you and talk to the dog and all that and get in the way of you using your dog. And the only questions I'm going to ask you are about your dog. Or there's the other side of I'm really afraid of dogs and I don't want you sitting next to me and I'm going to make a big scene if you come near me with that dog.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, so there's that aspect. There's the aspect of well, of course you're always having to clean up after the dog and hair, and you can't just pack up and go. You always have to consider the dog. Is it too hot? Is it this? You have to carry water, whatever. Uh, and that choice is kind of forced on you by the fact that you're choosing a mobility tool, either a dog or a cane. And I hate to think of a dog as a tool. Of course, the dog is a lot more than that, but ultimately, the goal is that you have some way to get around. So, of course, the dogs can be taught to find like upstairs versus downstairs. Um, they can be taught to find hopefully like elevators, something like that, and you can put in some good amount of work to train them to do certain things. But then the other problem comes in is that you're still missing a lot in your environment. One of the biggest problems that we have as blind people is a lack of information. So complete opposite to the cane, the dog's goal is to avoid obstacles. And so you're walking and you're missing so many things around you that maybe can help you with orientation. Of course, you
Yeah.
find other tools and other ways to orient yourself. Of course, that's the case. I had, a couple of dogs, and that is true. But you're still missing a lot of information. One of the biggest pain points I had is I'm in a new environment and I want to find a very specific door, a very specific exit or something. And maybe that door looks like a window. So I tell the dog left or turn, go inside or whatever. I'm walking around. I've had this a number of times, like I'm just struggling to find this door. And maybe I've walked past it like two or three times, not realizing maybe there's a door there. Um, and generally, like my dogs have targeted doors very well, but there have been some cases where that's been the case. Um, and dogs generally kind of do a lot better off when you have a better idea of where you're going. And so, in stressful situations, maybe you don't know exactly where you're going. I think the effectiveness of that tool kind of decreases a little bit. And so I don't know. I think for me, none of those options are great. I think I love dogs.
Yeah.
I love hiking with my dogs. Like that was absolutely great. And crossing streets, like you generally stay aligned and you generally get across the street. And if the dogs are trained, hopefully they are, they will back up if a car's coming at you or something. And you know, just having that little bit safety aspect, I think is better. And the overhead, hopefully they do those a little better. Although kind of mixed. I don't know. I've had mixed results with that one.
Yeah.
But ultimately you're still taking care of this other dog, and there's all the hassles that I mentioned that go along with it. So you either deal with that, or you deal with a cane that
Hmm.
has its set of problems. I think, like, I would love to find a hands-free solution or something that gives me as much or more information about my surroundings. One thing I tell people is get your iPhone out or get your phone out or something. Walk outside and point it around, and you'll be amazed at how many things you miss, how many signs there are, you know, advertisements on the buses, just so many things that you don't even know exist that would make just interacting with the world just so much easier, so much better, so much like I don't know, so much more fulfilling. Like you're gonna go out and here's all this stuff. Like you don't have to actually read it, but like unfortunately blind people, unfortunately we just don't usually have access to that kind of thing.
That really, I love the way that you explained how I asked you a pretty direct question. Why are you so repulsed by dogs and canes? And your answer was perfect. Your logic, the way that you logically walk through that whole equation, pointing out things that I've never thought of as a blind person, that's great. I love that answer, and you're so right. I mean, it's just a really good point, really good opinion. You should tell more people your opinion, because I think your opinion is very unusual. Most blind people would say one or the other, but very few of them would say that they're both kind of bad, and here's why. And then you also recognize the good, but you highlight the shortcomings of both in a very dynamic and tangible way for me. That's really cool. I've just never thought that way before. But you're
Yeah.
right. You're
The
so
unfortunate
right.
thing is this,
Yeah.
that building that momentum, there's a lot of, like, I mean, we have
Hmm.
cars now and planes that,
Yeah.
like, they have planes that take off and land themselves. Like we
Right.
have plenty of tech, make different type of wearables or indicate different type of information, or wearable glasses. We have the new headset that's coming out from Apple. Like a lot of this tech exists, and I think it can be refined and made even better. But from what I've seen in our community, we don't have the will, and there's also a lot of issues with technology. Of course, you start doing more high tech things, then how expensive is it, and is it waterproof, and can it go out in the cold, and there definitely are issues, but I want to see us go down the road of trying to come up with solutions. But unfortunately, there's not a huge appetite in our community. Like you said, so many people are very happy with the cane, very happy with the dog. They're used to what they're used to, and it's that. And so if you're a company that maybe you think about of these things and you want to innovate, you kind of have a community that's against you. Plus, you've had a lot of other tech products that have come along that have failed at this. You've had like the buzz clips and all these other things that don't really do very much, that that have kind of failed. So it's kind of a risk even getting into this market.
If you can, basically, we're at the end of the hour, and I just wanted to say thank you for a wonderful conversation. That really, just talking to you really made me more interested in these matters. I mean, I'm always all ears and all interested in these things, but just again, you're like the way that you plug yourself in, the way that you're like plugged into the keyboard of this knowledge that you have, just your delivery is really interesting, really unusual, and really great. And thank you. If you
I
can ask
appreciate
me,
chatting with you. Thank you.
yeah, but if you can ask me, oh, you aren't getting away that easily. If you can ask me only one question, and I'm really counting on you to really throw me a curveball. If you can ask me only one question to make me sweat, to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you want to know?
Well, we're just talking about the cane, and I know that you said you liked it and kind of hinted at it a little bit, but why are you so passionate about it?
I'm passionate about it because using a cane, or successfully, which I do now, or in the past using my guide dog successfully, which I did, both of those things helped me to travel the world and be a successful and active blind person interacting with the sighted community in a way that I felt was professional and appropriate. However, and on top of it, I commend and respect your perspective about it. See, we have very different opinions, and you have a great opinion about it, and you express it great, and that really stands out to me. But that's why I love canes and dogs, because for me, I learned how to use them successfully, and it helps me. Yeah.
So to add on, like,
Sure.
have you slammed your head into any objects or?
Of course, but all people
Okay.
do. All people do. Everybody has a day where you slam your head into something, either on purpose or accidentally, right? We all do it. It's
Well,
just more
sure. I mean, if you're
it's just
not,
more
if you're not
it's
paying
more
attention, but
embarrassing. It's just more
right.
frustrating for blind people, but sighted people do it all the time. They just don't tell us.
No, they do it, but it's generally like it's inattention. They're
Yeah.
being careless, not paying attention.
Right.
In the case of a blind person, like in my case, I've walked and gotten in the middle of construction sites,
Ooh. Ooh la
and
la.
I've hit the corner of ladders,
Ooh.
that have just been out in the sidewalk.
Yeah, don't do that. No, I know that I don't support. You don't need to hit the ladder.
The cane just kind of went under it. I didn't feel it
Yeah,
until my head hit it.
I know what you mean. I definitely do. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, it's been very great fun. I don't know if that was the kind of question you were hoping for, but
It
it's
was.
great
It
fun
was.
connecting
It
with
was
you.
very good. So if someone wants to get in touch with Nimer Jaber, how would they do it?
Yeah, just say email at nimerjaber.com, or find me on tweet at nimerjaber, or X, or whatever it's called now. Um, I'm sure you can probably look me up on the Facebook or something like that. Otherwise, just send me an email.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Do you know how I end an episode of Aaron's Opinion, by the way?
How's that?
I say thank you for joining us today, and help one person today, help a million people tomorrow.
Very good.
If you're still watching on YouTube, I want to say thank you for joining us today. Like it if you like it. As my friend in the community, Dustin, will tell you, dislike the video to help it move up in the algorithm. If not, though, comment below, share, and subscribe to the video. Subscribe to the channel. Nimer Jaber, you are forever welcome here on Aaron's Opinion, man. Thanks so much for giving me your knowledge and your very interesting and dynamic opinions. You're always welcome on my podcast, and we'll catch up over Messenger a little later, all right?
Thank you, Aaron.
Always welcome. Help one person today, help a million people.